Hello and welcome back to Allie Bakes, where I am baking my way through the Cordon Bleu Pastry School textbook. Today is a big day because we are officially at the end of our Biscuits and Small Cakes chapter, and we are capping it off with these sandwich ganache cookies with a very haunting facial expression. I am so excited to finally be finished with this chapter, so come with me, pull on your apron, put on your best set of Crocs, and let's get started. My journey with these cookies actually started about 12 hours ago, right when I rolled out of bed, because we have to make this ganache ahead of time. So we have 225 milliliters of cream going into a saucepan over medium-low heat. Once it is almost boiling, or once it forms this odd leather skin like mine did, we have to add the cursed ingredient, glucose. 22 grams of this sticky substance from hell went in with my cream in the sauce pot. Once the goo dissipated, I took the mixture off the heat and we poured this over 200 grams of 65% cocoa. I honestly think making ganache is one of the most satisfying things in the world. I also happen to think it's one of the most delicious ingredients in the world, and I love using it in recipes. This all got stirred together until the chocolate was almost completely dissolved, and then I added 35 grams of unsalted room temperature butter and stirred that all together as well. The real ganache magic happens when it goes from looking like this to looking like this. After the ganache was fully ganachified, I took some cling wrap and I covered this bad boy because it had to set for 12 hours, hence the bathrobe. It was very early when I got up to make this. Alright, we are back and we are starting on the shortbread portion of the pastry, so we are creaming 120 grams of room temperature unsalted butter. Once that is smooth, we're adding 65 grams of icing sugar along with 2 grams of salt. Mix, mix, mix until thoroughly combined and looking kind of like scrambled eggs. And then in goes 25 grams of ground almonds. Those get mixed in, and then we add 1 small egg, roughly 40 grams. Now we're really in scrambled egg territory, but not to worry, we're going to add 200 grams of plain flour to finish off our cookie dough. This flour gets mixed in until just combined because I did not want overdeveloped gluten in my cookies. That would make them very tough. Now we're pulling out our good friend the saran wrap again because this cookie dough has to chill in the fridge for an hour. So I'm plopping it out, and then we are flattening it into a nice little disc, which is going to take a nice little nap in our fridge for roughly an hour. And boom, it's an hour later. I am preheating my oven to 302 degrees Fahrenheit and getting our nice little cookie dough disc out of the fridge. I am generously flouring my work surface so I can roll it out without any stickage. This dough is supposed to get rolled out to a thickness of 4 millimeters. Didn't really feel like breaking out my ruler today, so we just eyeballed it. Once we were about at the right thickness, I pulled out my 7-centimeter biscuit cutter and started cutting out circles. With shortbread pastry, you want to keep the pastry as cold as possible. Once that butter starts to melt, your cookies are going to start to spread in the oven. So I was keeping my surface and my hands floured and working as quick as possible, trying really hard not to touch that dough so I wouldn't heat it up with my hands. And now was time to cut out their spooky little faces. I didn't have teeny tiny biscuit cutters, so I just used my piping nozzles to cut out the mouth holes. And I'm so perplexed because there is a seasonal holiday chapter of this book and these cookies were not in it. So I don't think they're supposed to be spooky Halloween cookies, but whoever decided on this design must have really been having a bad day because they are chilling. But the dough cooperates really well for this kind of design, so I just poked out some eye holes with a smaller piping nozzle and got ready to toss them in the oven.
Maybe you gotta make the face now.
After screaming for mercy in their fiery hellscape for about 15 minutes, I finally pulled the cookies out. They were still pale in the middle, but they had that nice brown ring around the outside, so that's kind of how I eyeballed that they were done. They also smelled really good, and they held their shape when I scooped them off the tray. And they don't really look any happier coming out than they did going in. Now I took that ganache that I slaved over in my bathrobe this morning that's been chilling on my counter for about 12 hours, and I put that into a piping bag so I could pipe it onto my cookies. Using my star nozzle, I piped a nice little swirl onto each cookie. The ganache was super smooth and it smelled really, really good. I don't really know if the star-shaped nozzle made much of a difference because the next step is to smash their little faces onto it. And my little scary creations were finished. The serving suggestion was a glass of milk, so obviously I had to opt for some almond milk out of my fridge to enjoy these chocolate cookies with.
I'm worried if I eat one of these is gonna steal my soul to take for their own.
The first thing I noticed when I bit in was the immediate goopage because that ganache was so liquidy. Well, not liquidy per se, it just hadn't set up the way that was required, I think, for these cookies, so there was some definite spillage.
They taste exactly how they look. And that tasted about how I thought it would taste before I even baked them. It tastes like shortbread with chocolate frosting. Which is not like my personal fave, just because I don't really like super sweet stuff. The ganache is good on its own. It's just really rich. And I feel like one of these took my soul in return for one of theirs. Because these cookies are cursed.
These cookies were a fun way to end the chapter. I want to thank you so much for sticking with me as we traveled through the world of biscuits and small cakes. I give these scary little guys a 5 out of 10. But I'll see you on the next one.